Oh, hello.
Well, hello there, James.
Hello, Craig. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Hopefully, starting to see people join in the audience there. So, hello, everybody at home.
We're actually working. We're visible and we can be heard. It's a miracle.
That's a win straight off the bat. Yeah.
No, I know that was the biggest fear, wasn't it? Was that it would just the countdown would end and then it would just be a blank screen, and that would be it.
Yeah, we've run Monday nights begin here.
This is it. This is your new Monday night. You don't need to go anywhere else. We're all ready to go. Have we got people joining in?
Looks like it. If there's anybody joining in at home, feel free to drop into the chat and just say hello, say where you are, because we are quite literally going global right now. So from Amble to Portugal, we are live across the world.
We've got viewers in Portugal. We've got viewers in the US of the A as well. We are global. It's fantastic. And we're going to talk about some cool stuff. We're going to talk about what's happening in politics right now as well. But we're also going to talk about, I guess in this first episode, Craig, kind of our backgrounds, why this is happening, why we're even doing it, and how we've come about doing it, which is good. And we've got a few, no shortage of news right now. Not all of it good, I'm afraid, to talk about. But we will get through it, and hopefully we'll get through it together and without being too depressed at the end of it. We'll be able to try and lift your spirits at the same time as well while you watch.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely perfect to me, James. I think, like you said, because might have some people joining in now who may know one of us, may know both of us, might not really know either of us, and have just dropped in straight through YouTube. So, yeah.
The lucky people are the people who know both of us. They're the lucky ones. That's a very specific Venn diagram of people who know both of us. Excellent. Right, well, let's get cracking then while people are joining in. This is That Class. And we've called it that for a reason. We've called it that because, firstly, it's a well-known expression in the northeast of England. And you might have guessed by our accents, those of you who are on the outside of that Venn diagram, who don't know either of us, that that class is an expression that we use in the northeast to talk about things that are class, that are good, that are positive. But also at the same time, and this became apparent when me and Craig began our conversations a couple of months ago, that class is at the heart of both of our politics as well. And it's something we feel doesn't get talked about enough, is it? And we're both from the same part of the world. We're both from Northumberland, but we didn't know each other until a few months ago. And this is one of the wonders of social media. One of the few positives of social media is, I'm sure those of you who are joining who either know Craig or have seen him on social media, is you're able to find people who everybody. And I think Craig's one of those people, and I'd seen him. I'd recognized the accent. I thought, well, sounds like a kind of Northumbrian-ish accent, but you never know. I thought you could be from anywhere from Durham, further north, But it turned out that we were a bit closer to home than that, weren't we? We were miles away from each other.
Yeah, that's it. It's just to go back to what you said earlier about the sort of the class thing. I think as I've been making my little journey through the start of my journey through the world of politics, and it's a big world, is that like I'm starting to realize more and more that the more we focus on left and right, the less we're focusing on top and bottom and class itself, which I think affects all of us a lot more than what we realize. And a lot of the conversations that you have are focused on things that aren't around class, So I'm glad that we can put this together and focus specifically on that. I think it's super important. But yeah, you're right. I think like the using social media to actually make that connection's been a rare win, because it's more often than not, social media is used as a tool for negativity. So yeah. This amazing has come off the back of the social media connection. So yeah, it's good for something anyway.
Even us just connecting, but your content and the kind of content you were making, I'd long said that somebody needed to be making that. Somebody needed to, and there's lots of people out there making content. I feel people sometimes feel like it's in a vacuum, But it's very rare to find someone who's making content that reaches out to the other side, and the people who aren't necessarily political or aren't necessarily, politically affiliated. My background is a very tribal person. I was in the Labour Party for many years. I'm not a Labour member anymore, but I came through that through trade unionism. That was my background, was that. And as soon as we sat down and had a coffee in Amble, didn't we realised that like the similarity was crazy. No wonder we get along so well, because that's kind of your intro into the world of politics as well, is through work, isn't it? And so much of that is about your actual working relationships, your relationship with employment. And as two lads who didn't go to university, that in itself is quite a rarity in politics these days.
Yeah, definitely. Do you know what it is? I think doing this live stream as well, it's, for those who don't know, my sort of main source of content, or what it is that I put into this world of politics, is through short form content on Instagram and TikTok. That guy Craig, go give us a follow, by the way. So yeah, perfect.
Absolutely.
No, and so I think what would be nice is to sort of like be able to open up those talking points a little bit more, and actually try and have a little bit more of a nuanced conversation. Hopefully a back and forth with different people. If you want to contribute in the chat, that's amazing. But yeah, because I feel like, it can be very, very blunt on social media. You've got 60 seconds usually to try and get a point across for what can be very complex conversations. So yeah, hopefully this will be a space where all of us can sort of make our way through what can be super like confusing and complex stories that we see online, because I think it's pretty naive to call yourself a true expert in all of these different fields and all these different things that are affecting our lives. So I think hopefully we can try and make our way through them together. That's what I would like to do anyway.
I think that's it. And if you don't know, I think people often feel overwhelmed, and you can be so overstimulated online looking at what you want to consume and what kind of things you want to know. And there's a reason we're doing this live. And it's so that we can engage with people as well, because we don't, we had the chance just to do a podcast, and, that's cool. We're going to put this out as a podcast and people can listen in their own time and at their own leisure. But the opportunity that we get from actually being able to have a back and forth with people, being able to have a conversation on YouTube, and people can comment and then come live and watch us as we have these conversations, and also steer the conversations. The direction isn't set. We've got ideas of what we want to talk about, but we're not scripted. We don't want to just be stuck to one particular thing. So the conversation will be fluid. And that's kind of the most exciting part of this for me, I think, Craig, is the ability that we don't have in our short form stuff to be able to expand the conversation. Likewise for me, when I do my TV and radio, which is kind of my background now, is broadcast media. And that is a whole different animal. You've got, again, very similar to the short form social media stuff. You've got, a 6-7 minute interview. You're going to talk twice or 3 times in it. And in that time, you have to make the case. And often you feel like you're doing it as a competition. It's almost like a courtroom. You're trying to one up the other person. Whereas what you don't get much time for is an honest chat, about everything and anything that's happening right now. Because so many of the issues in the world right now are just interconnected. They're all interconnected. So many of them aren't standalone issues. They're not in a vacuum. We're going to talk about Iran tonight. That'll lead us to talk about Donald Trump. That'll lead us to talk about reform. That'll lead us to talk about Farage. All of these things are kind of interspersed. So it's good to be able to, when we tug on one thread, to be able to follow it all the way through.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a couple of things as well, like just to sort of half introduce the idea of that class in the first place, is that like we're coming at this of an angle where, it's not a point of view coming out of London. It's not, I want to sort of reflect on how these things are impacting working class communities, rural working class communities, like where I live in Amble, where like you were brought up in Alnwick, just up the road there. So, and I think having that freedom as well, it's nice to come out with a clean slate and be able to say, nobody's telling us exactly what to say. Nobody's telling us what narratives, this is all stuff that's coming from the heart. And we're trying to just intersect the things that, we really, really care about. And that's our, our communities, our homes, our families and friends, so, yeah.
We've been unleashed. That's what we've had. We've had the shackles removed. Exactly. So now we can talk about what we want in our own time, and that's great. But I do think as well, it'll be useful, I think, for people listening and people watching. I know Craig's going to monitor a bit of the chat if anyone puts anything in there. I can't see that side of it right now, but for anyone who does comment about where they are or what location they're in, that'd be useful for us because, what do people know? We're talking about Northumberland, Craig. We might have people here, from the US, people from all over the world who don't know. They don't have the pleasure of knowing where Amble is, right? So what would you, if you had to summarize Amble, right, in a couple of words, or even Northumberland and life growing up in Northumberland, how would you summarize it?
Growing up in Northumberland,
Yeah.
my experience, I think I like to cast the mediocre shadow on myself, but sometimes being mediocre is a lot more special than you think. That's what I'm starting to learn as I'm going through the process. And no, I think growing up in Northumberland, realistically, like, you're not growing up in a big city. You're not growing up in a big metro area, and there's a certain element of there being like a bit of like a what's the word? A bit of like a comfort blanket almost. You're not like,
yeah.
I know I grew up, I could sort of stay out late and not really worry about it too much, and you're going out. Going up to the woods and making dens and all that sort of stuff, certainly when I was younger. That probably changed as I got a little bit older. I know I've seen my dad pop up in the chat there, going out and drinking when I was probably too young as well,
Be careful what you say then if he's up in there in the chat. That's it.
So we've got someone from Widgerton, but we've also got a Beth Clark from Portugal. So there you go. We are truly global.
International right now. International trailblazers. That's what we are. But I do think, I really identify with that idea of comfort and blanket. And, Northumberland itself, it was a huge privilege to grow up there. Beautiful place. Often trying to get people to understand that there's still poverty amongst that and that there's still challenges. I think because often people see beautiful places, right? And they think, oh, everyone here must be well off. Everyone must be, that kind of affluent, especially Alnwick, always had that reputation because, it's the seat of the Duke of Northumberland. You've got a castle. You've got all these things. But a lot of the time, people are employed in seasonal work. People are employed in, like, tourism industries now. Obviously, you had industry. You had, like, the pit at Shillbottle, at Whittle. And you had places, obviously, right down to South Northumberland where you had a lot more prominent industry. But even North Northumberland, when we were growing up around our time, those opportunities had kind of sort of died a death. And your chances of what you did and your choices were kind of few and far between. And I kind of knew university wasn't for me because I'd been bad enough at school, not abilities wise, just a naughty lad, I didn't want to sit in a classroom. And I think a lot of that time people don't realize that neurodiversity plays a part in that. But yeah, it's been interesting connecting and talking about that. And you ended up and for people who don't know, Craig was in the RAF for a time because of that. And, our routes through the more unconventional routes where I think most people we knew went to university or pals went off to uni. And if they did an apprenticeship or something like that. But, you went in the route of the forces as well, which is gives you a very unique outlook and experience.
Yeah, I think it's funny when you talk about like, the opportunities coming out of school and stuff like that and the collapse of industry in the area. I think for myself coming out of school, I probably would have been prime candidate to go and work in the pit. Really, I didn't really have much of a direction. I didn't want to go to university. And I think like the village where I grew up, Widgerton was a pit village. There was a couple of terraces put there for the families of the miners, So once those pits closed, there was little bits of infrastructure I went in and around, but there's no industry for school leavers. So I thought my best chance really to go and get a trade and make something myself was to go off and join the RAF at 16 years old. I think I was 17 when I actually left. But
it's no age at all, is it? Like it's wild to think when you think of like a 16, 17-year-old now, it's like it's no age at all. So to leave home and kind of go into that.
Well, there's an injustice there, isn't there? Like I would never say I'd regret my decision because it's all roads have led me to where I am today. I'm very happy with where I am. Having this amazing conversation on a Monday night, live streaming around the world. Do you know what I mean? To put it bluntly, not done too bad, have we?
No, not done too bad.
But yeah, like there is an injustice there in a 16-year-old thinking that is the best opportunity, But you make do, and I think that's what a lot of people from our backgrounds do. You do your best to get yourself a trade or whatever it is, get yourself into a position where you can start to make something of yourself.
Yeah, I think that other thing as well that you'll be able to give so much of a unique perspective on is like defense and military stuff, right? From the perspective of the left, because often on the left, we don't like talking about it. We don't like conversations that seem, about military or about whatever. It feels like it's a domain that the left has kind of, I guess, given up on a lot of the time and kind of withdrawn from, retreated. That's the perfect word, isn't it? Yeah, retreated from that space and vacated it. And as a result, people assume that people in the services would be right-wing or would be conservative. And of course, there's a lot of that. But you take the Labour government after World War II, Clement Attlee's in 1945, a huge swathe of their electorate were returning servicemen from World War II. That was what made that electoral victory against Churchill, after Churchill had just won a world war, even possible. So I think it'll be really interesting to dig into that stuff as well. And that kind of segues us, I guess, onto inevitably what we're going to have to talk about tonight, which is war. And obviously at the moment, there are many different developments on the front with Iran. I think it might be worthwhile us just taking stock of where things stand right now. So the UK government has faced pressure from Donald Trump and from the US administration to allow them to use air bases for different things. Obviously, many of the air bases that they've then asked to use have come under attack from retaliation from Iran anyway, from Trump's attacks. And now that Starmer seems to be mobilizing some additional defense, there's already RAF pilots and fighter jets in the region, kind of defending Cyprus and other places. But now that he's mobilizing Navy vessels and potentially even an aircraft carrier, I think it's Prince of Wales is the aircraft carrier, I think he said. If that goes out to the Middle East, I mean, Donald Trump has already said it's too little, too late. So you're not doing it to appease him, surely, because that's not going to happen. And at this stage, and you have to ask yourself, does that bring us closer to being directly involved in a war with Iran?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many threads to pull away at this one, isn't there? I mean, I think potentially just worth mentioning, like, really on a basic level, what has sort of kicked this all off. Not diving into 1,000, 2,000 years worth of history in the Middle East, because as much as I would love to do some revision on that before we start the stream up, it's probably a difficult one to chew into, But the Ayatollah, who is since now been killed by Israeli and American airstrikes, has been replaced. This is the thing. I think when we're approaching these sorts of situations, it's like there's certainly not a binary view to take on this, because obviously the regime in Iran, not particularly a nice bunch, I think, to put it the simplest of ways, but also to go in and try and remove that regime in the manner that's been taken place. I think there's definitely a naivety, maybe not naivety, maybe an obnoxiousness about thinking that all of, just carrying out some airstrikes in Iran and leaving it to the people of Iran to then overthrow a regime is pretty... A
regime many of them have been trying to overthrow for some time. And there's similarities. Obviously, it's never useful to draw direct comparisons between countries because they're all very different. But there are comparisons to be made between Afghanistan as well, Like, for example, it's that side. I mean, I got accused yesterday after doing a Sky News bit by somebody who messaged me accusing me of both sidism, which was a new one for me to hear. And what he was saying was essentially that I was criticizing Iran just because I felt like I had to. I don't feel like I have to just criticize Iran, but I will criticize Iran as well. Two things can be true at the same time. I abhor Donald Trump. I abhor what the United States of America is doing. I despise the Israeli actions and their genocide in Gaza. I disagree with all of this military action because it's just making the people of Iran suffer. But I also believe that the Iranian regime is monstrous and executes people for very basic human rights requests. Women have been suffering for many, many years since the 1970s revolution. And of course, we know that revolution in Iran, its origins were in resisting Western interference. That makes a lot of sense. We understand that. But it doesn't make the actions of that regime since then any better or any more moralistic than anyone else. So I think it's important to identify both things. This guy who messaged me was saying, well, the Iranian regime's done nothing wrong. It's all the West. And I was like, you can't. It's not that simple. You can criticize both things.
Yeah, 100%. I think, like you say, there's clearly a monstrous regime in place in Iran, but the approach that's been taken by Donald Trump, is illegal, right? Yeah. So it wasn't in retaliation. So I think the UN definition of an illegal war taking place is that it's not retaliation, and it hasn't been cleared, it hasn't been cleared by the UN Council to take action. So Donald Trump's got neither of those things. So by definition, from the UN, it is an illegal war which Donald Trump is initiating, right? Mm-hmm. But what's happened is he's taken action in Iran with no plan, right? No plan in place. Just let's just kill this guy. Let's kill the Ayatollah. Yeah. And now what's happened is just on a super basic level, I think was it today they've instated the new supreme leader, which is the son of the Ayatollah. The son, yeah. So that's not a regime change. He's obviously clearly part of the exact same regime taking place. But now what you have is a supreme leader who has just lost his father, who's just lost his wife in the strikes, and just lost his child, right? Yeah. Now, what sort of approach is that new supreme leader going to have to the West? I know, I mean, again, not justifying any of the actions taken by the regime, but I know in that situation how I would feel towards the West. Yeah. And that's there's going to be repercussions there somewhere. And
you've seen that as a last stand, I think, for this movement, right? The Iranian revolution that was all, it's a theocratic revolution. I'm an atheist. I don't agree with theocracies at all. I don't want religion in any part of government, right? They are an extremist religious sect, who rule over Iran. It's nothing, again, and this is where even more complexities come in because of the Islamophobia that we see in Western countries rising, right? They will use that to their advantage. You'll hear the usual suspects saying that, Iran's a prime example of Muslims and an example of Islam and all the rest of it. It's a very extreme example of that, in exactly the same way as, any Christian nation, maybe the US, perhaps, for example, could be seen, when theocracy comes into that. We saw Donald Trump the other day being preyed on. I don't know if you saw that. Do you see where he was in the Oval Office and all his faith leaders were praying around him? So I think, making sure that we understand the levels of complexity to this isn't dismissing any of the horrors, but you cannot commit horrors just because the other side also is committing horrors. And I don't acknowledge them being other side. I think they're a regime that the Iranian people want rid of. I hope that happens. But I don't, to think Donald Trump is doing that out of the goodness of his heart, when already today they've been talking about seizing oil production in Iran. We know what the motivation is.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, just going from that, basic sort of, given that base level of what's going on at the moment in Iran, I think, there's a couple of things that I think would be useful to talk about. And one being, how is all of this going to affect us, right? Because we're here in the UK, this is all happening, unfolding in the Middle East. It's a long, long way away. The threat, it would seem, of any missile strikes in the UK is incredibly low, if not impossible. So we're safe to a certain extent, all right? Mm-hmm. At least in direct warfare. So that, it gives you a nice fuzzy warm feeling, doesn't it? Now, there's lots and lots of issues. This is a super complicated situation when you start firing missiles in the Middle East, right? Yeah. And the most obvious and direct being is the effect it has on the price of oil. So we've seen that. Has it doubled? It's gone up to, was it $100 a barrel?
It's over 100 a barrel of crude now, which is insane.
And that for a lot of people, right, just saying $100 a barrel for a barrel of oil is sort of abstract. It doesn't. We're not going to the shop and buying a barrel of oil, are we?
Yeah, no one's buying it.
Who cares, right? But what it does mean is that the price. I've actually, this is where I've done a bit of homework, right? Every $10 on the barrel, right? Every $10 on the barrel that the cost goes up, and we've seen it go up and up and up with what's going on in Iran, is 7p on the petrol pump. And that doesn't seem like a lot, right? But when it's going up and up and up, that puts a lot of strain on a lot of different services, a lot of different people, just household bills in general. So you're seeing fuel prices go up, right? 7p for every $10. Food prices. So this is something. In fact, actually, just before we continue there, for those who are actually watching, I'll give a little bit of give you a bit of an understanding as to why the price of oil is going up, right? So I'm just going to pull something up on screen there. Hopefully, those who are watching, you'll be able to see what's going on there.
The Strait of Hormuz.
Exactly. So this Strait of Hormuz is basically a bottleneck where about 20% of the world's oil and gas needs to navigate through to reach the rest of the world. Now, off the back of the Ukraine war, what was it? How many years ago is it now? That's been a good few years.
I think it's 4 years. Yeah.
3 years. We started importing a lot more of our oil from the Middle East as it was seen to be a more stable source of oil and gas.
Yeah.
That which says a lot, really. So we're quite heavily reliant on all of the oil and gas that comes through the Strait of Hormuz. So, as I just said there, it directly impacts the price of fuel at the pump. It also affects the price of food. So when you go to the supermarket, those prices are going to start to go up because the fertilizer that we use on farms is produced using gas, right? So it's ammonia, nitrogen-based fertilizers. That's produced. I think there's quite a few different places where they make these different fertilizers, but the long and short of it is the price of that fertilizer is going to go up, which means the price of food is also going to go up. So when we go to Morrison's to pick up it's already expensive. That's going to go up further, and all thanks to Donald Trump firing missiles at
Iran. The fuel aspect as well. People forget. Of course, fuel is, from an individual point of view, you go and put it in your car, but you have to think about world transport and transport of goods as well. What the companies do is they put their margins up to reflect, obviously, the loss that they're making because of the increase in fuel for them, whether they're running a tanker, whether they're running, a fleet of wagons or lorries or whatever it is, that knock-on effect of that price increase also hits us on every single good or item you could ship anywhere in the world.
Exactly. And then on top of that, so you've got the food prices go up, where naturally our energy bills are going to go up because we rely on gas for both our electricity and obviously our gas that you use in your house. That being said, while domestic bills are going to go up, the cost of industrial energy is also going to go up. So what that means is the factory up the road from where you live, the bills are going up for those places, and that will put those jobs at risk. So our manufacturing industries, and this is where I actually, for those who don't know, after my job with the TUC, I work around manufacturing industries. And one of the biggest issues we face, right, with manufacturing industries is industrial energy prices. Now, this is an absolute nightmare for those bills. So jobs will be at risk because Donald Trump is invading Iran, starting a war with Iran.
Many of those jobs were already at risk, weren't they? Were on the tipping edge.
Exactly. So that's another aspect of it. Then inflation. So we're going to see mortgage rates go up. The cost of borrowing is going to go up. The long and short of it, in pretty much any way you can think, this is coming out of our pockets to fund this war. Which So just to sort of wrap that little section up of like how that's going to impact us in the pocket, right? There's one thing that we could do, which is quite obvious in my book, to sort of cut this out of the equation, cut the reliance on imported oil and gas, and that is to create our own energy independence in the UK by relying on renewable energy. We've got wind, we've got the sun, we've got plenty of it, maybe not the sun so much. And if we would invest more in renewables, we would reduce the need to get oil from these places. It's as simple as that. And it's not as simple as that. There's a lot more conversation to be had, but maybe for another episode.
If those kind of investments in renewables been taken seriously and had continued 15, 20 years ago, when they first came about, then we wouldn't be under threat in the way that we are now. And it's all right to say that with hindsight. I know that, I get it. But I heard, even the government, I have frustrations with this Labour government. I'm sure we'll come on to that in some depth at some point. But, right now, this morning, I think Steve Reid was on doing the media rounds, government minister, and he'd said, basically that, as much as that, it said we need to be focusing on that creation of our own thing. But at the same time, you've got the influence at the moment on the right because people are feeling the impact of it. And they think, oh, well, the easiest thing would be to double down and drill, baby, drill, as Donald Trump says about his fossil fuel industry. And Farage, Richard Tice, the people who were in reform and on the right of British politics here, are all saying the same thing as well. I think that their most used phrase at the moment is net stupid zero, which I'm not sure it's going to win awards for political marketing, to be honest. But, they do bang that drum a lot because they want to double down. They want to get rid of green energy altogether, and they want to focus on fossil fuels. We know why, because they've got investments in it. They've got money to make off the back of it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's worth saying, right, even putting climate aside, which is obviously a huge, huge factor in the conversation around clean energy and renewables, right? If you were just to focus on energy independence, as we just spoke about there, and why it's so important that we can, produce our own clean energy, massive in times like this. I focus, like, my big passion when it comes to my work is jobs, right? So I'm a trade unionist. Over the next few weeks we'll probably get more into that sort of stuff. But my whole focus on my day job is making sure that we've got manufacturing jobs, and I can hand on heart say that we need to make sure that we're having a transition over to clean energy, right?
Yeah,
we need to make sure that the people in oil and gas right now have got jobs to go into, and we shouldn't be banning, we shouldn't be bringing down production until we've got a plan in place.
Yeah.
But to ignore the opportunities that we've got in renewables, and to just go back in time and to focus on what is an old basin in the North Sea, it's getting more and more expensive to extract out of it. We need to put a plan in place. But if the likes of Nigel Farage was really, really patriotic and truly cared about working people and truly cared about jobs and people having money in their pockets, he would be doing everything he can to win supply chains in the UK. So what that basically means is to win the places that make wind turbines. We should be making all this stuff here in the UK, because that provides jobs for people like me, and people like you. But instead, if we don't focus on that, we'll be importing all of the things from China, Europe, or anywhere but here, because these jobs exist now, right? We're building loads of wind turbines off in the North Sea, but the majority of the parts aren't made here in the UK, and that's because we've let ourselves get behind. So yeah, just to wrap up on that, I think we really need to make sure that we're holding the people like Nigel Farage to account, not just for being reckless when it comes to climate, but reckless when it comes to jobs and the opportunities that we've got for working class communities and kids come out of school. Like I just mentioned, how perfect would it have been if I could have gone out of school and got a job at the local, I don't know, whatever, ball bearing factory or something, do you know what I mean? Rather than having to join the RAF. So
this is the thing, and I think the really fascinating thing for me with how this falls economically is because you will hear from right wingers, you will hear from conservatives. One of the common ground areas you can normally find, right, is that, and I found this knocking on doors, I found this in conversations in the media, everywhere. You can say to someone, no matter what their political affiliation is, this country doesn't make things anymore. Right, and they'll all agree with you because we don't. Right, manufacturing died a death; it was sold off. The reason why is always the thing that's up for dispute, right? And that's the really interesting thing. You ask some conservatives, all the ones will say, "Well, young people don't want to work anymore; they don't want to do that anymore." Well, that's nonsensical. It's absolute nonsense. The jobs aren't there, and those industries closed, and it's exactly the same argument. And to hear the TUC and to hear trade unionists, right? You have to remember trade unionists whose first and foremost kind of focus always has to be the jobs, right? And the jobs of their members. To hear them being able to say, we need to transition to renewable energy, right? We need to get rid of this old industry and create a new one and have jobs in it. If trade unions can do that, it blows my mind that that governments can't, because trade unions are the most democratic representation of workers, right? Everybody there is normally elected into positions or comes through the workforce. I know we'll talk more in detail over the coming weeks about trade unionism and our backgrounds. But for me, if the trade unions, who at one time, were fighting to keep pits open, are now able to say fossil fuels are a no-go, and not just for the environment, for the economy, then it makes total sense for me for a government to back that altogether. I think the Labour government has. I just don't know if it is in substance, a lot of the time. And we can talk more about that at some point. But that gives an understanding, or gives a bit of a more in-depth understanding about why we are in the situation we're in. And nobody could have predicted 10 years ago, we would have wars waging both in the Middle East and in Eastern Europe at the same time, because of the destabilizing nature of some of the governments that we've got. I have no doubt. The Ukrainian war, when people say, oh, It never would have happened if Donald Trump was in office, because it was Biden who was in office. It's because of Donald Trump and because of destabilizing forces that people like Putin, the Israelis and Benjamin Netanyahu, they're all emboldened to do these actions and to create things. And one thing actually I've got to share as well here is talking more about the reasoning, right? The US has changed its mind 3-4 times in the past week about why it's doing this. It will say it's to remove nuclear capabilities from Iran. They said they did that previously, in the last action. So we don't know how that's possible. And every nuclear expert, engineer, scientist who's been interviewed that I've seen has said Iran doesn't have nuclear capability right now. It was set back so massively in that effort in the last time they were bombed by the US and Israel. But what they're now, and this it really, honestly, really winds me up to hear this, is Donald Trump and people like Pete Hegseth, his Secretary of formerly Defense, now War, if that gives you any insight into their mindset on this, actually saying that they're doing this to help liberate women. I mean, that is from a man who is, we can talk more about that, but from a man who is, in my opinion, I will say, to cover us legally here, a predator and a sex offender. To hear that is just staggering. But it's kind of come to a head, and he's been given this gift in Australia over the past 24 hours with the Iranian women's football team. And if I'll just share this actually now, I think we can see there that these players from the Iranian women's football team, hugely brave. I mean, a lot of the revolution and a lot of the revolutionary action in Iran has been led by women. Always
just worth saying that they were in Australia for the football match.
Yeah, exactly. They were playing, representing Iran. When it came to them singing their national anthem before the game, they boycotted it, right? And they stood, as you can see them standing in that image. They boycotted the game against the Philippines on Sunday. And basically they played, but obviously wouldn't sing the national anthem. And as a result, they will face serious repercussions. Their lives probably in danger. The lives of their family are in danger back in Iran because of the regime. However, as I understand it, when Iranian sports teams travel outside of Iran, they are escorted by, the Guard, by the Revolutionary Guard, who are the kind of enforcers of behavior in Iran. And so they are normally confined to their hotel rooms and not allowed to leave. Contact was made 24 hours ago between Australian Iranians, so people who live in Australia and are of Iranian descent, and the team. And they managed to reassure them that they were safe and couldn't be hurt when they're in Australia, and have tried to seek asylum, and they're seeking refuge in Australia. There was a mix-up initially in how this was reported, and Donald Trump, being Donald Trump, immediately took to Truth Social to criticize the Australian government, and he was saying that they need to let them claim asylum. They should let them claim asylum. It turned out there was nobody stopping them claiming asylum. The Australian government is working with them. It wants to. So while that's happened, he's then come out and said that he will offer them asylum in the US, which for a guy who, not only 20 days ago was saying that all Iranians, no Iranian can travel to the US, obviously not at the moment, but they can't claim asylum, they can't get visas. That's been the case for quite a while. So now he's saying that he wants to give asylum to these people because obviously he wants to use it for his political capital and his narrative, which allows him to say that he's trying to liberate these women or save them. I just think it's staggering.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe that a figure like Donald Trump is, doing this to liberate women, given we'll call them allegations coming out of the files, as you probably have to call them online. And I think, to be honest, the first thing that comes to mind for me, I think I spend a lot of time thinking about what's happening domestically, if I'm honest. And I'm seeing, just this week, or was it the back end of last week, that Nigel Farage had gone over to visit Donald Trump and no doubt, go cap in hand and surrender any sort of dignity that he might have had left, and not that he probably had much. And I think just that unconditional support that he's willing to give a character like Donald Trump speaks a lot about Nigel Farage's character.
Yeah.
You know, not just on the back of what's come out of the files, but the fact that, you know, all of the things that we've just spoke about there, about how this war in the Middle East is going to directly affect the people of Britain, right? And this is a man who campaigned specifically about putting British people first. Now, it seems to me that he quite clearly cares more about what Donald Trump thinks of him than what he does about, you know, the people who are sat at home listening to this now, how it's going to affect them financially, whether it's going to affect their jobs. And I just think it's just another example of where Nigel Farage says one thing, it just doesn't care. I mean, he changes his mind as well more than Donald Trump himself, you know. So.
And people do. I mean, people even on the right and the far right are picking up on that as well now. You know, you're seeing groups like Restore, this new political party started by Rupert Lowe. That's come about because of these fractures on the right of their relationships with each other. And it's because people like Rupert Lowe, who are very hardline on certain things, very ethno-nationalist, you know, they believe that Britain's a white Christian nation, all of this stuff. I mean, I call it what it is. It's white supremacy. You know, so it's MAGA from America, but here. They look at Farage in the same way that Elon Musk did and think that he's not strong enough on this stuff because Farage loves his dog whistles, right? He walks a very fine line. He tries to give credence to that stuff and use it for his own political leverage, but at the same time, he's always very careful not to say anything that crosses a line. And it's been a frustration for so many people for so long.
Listen, I mean, we've seen what conflict in the Middle East does, right? In terms of, moving populations around and you know, bringing people away from their native lands and having to claim asylum in various different countries. Now, if Nigel Farage really cared about stopping the boats, as he loves to campaign on, does a war in the Middle East help that campaign, or does it hinder it? Do you know what I mean? Like, if the people that he's going to deplace.
Yeah, exactly. You can deplace more. I mean, many of the refugees we are still seeing now are coming from countries like Syria, like Libya, you know, countries where, like, we've forgotten about those wars because they were 5-6 years ago, you know. We've forgotten about Afghan, we've forgotten about Iraq, all of these things. The destabilizing doesn't stop. You know, it takes years for people to uproot their lives, the journey that people have been on, you know, to try and claim asylum in different places. And obviously, it's just also about basic compassion. And talking about wars, previous wars as well, we've had a very unhelpful intervention from somebody who loves to put himself in the limelight quite regularly, Tony Blair. I would love it, Craig, if Tony Blair just retired and just went and lived on an island. And maybe that's not the right thing to say at the moment with the certain things, but maybe if he just went and went away somewhere where we didn't have to hear what he thinks about anything ever again.
Isn't he on the board of peace with Donald Trump?
Yeah.
Isn't that those guys? That's them,
that's
the ones who want to start a war in the Middle East.
The guy who thinks that, you know, despite all of the various inquiries into the illegal war that he waged with George W. Bush in the Middle East, that he thinks that Britain getting involved in another one would be a great idea in a neighboring country. You just can't make it up with these people. You know, you really can't. And Blair is such an egomaniac. And I say that proudly. I mean, I remember about maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago when I was getting really into being picked up on media stuff and I was getting booked a lot. And I started getting offered contracts, you know, for Sky, for BBC. And I was at an event in London, a bit of a swanky event, and some former kind of Downing Street advisors were there, and we were chatting. And somebody said to me, you know, you're very good, James. You're very good at what you say, but you need to lay off on Tony. You know, Tony, you know, you have to understand that progressive politics in Britain, everything centers around Tony. He's doing amazing work with his Global Institute. He's doing all this fantastic stuff. So, you know, and you would jeopardize your career if you continue to attack Tony Blair. I don't want a career if it hinges on Tony Blair, because I'm telling you now, there is nobody who has damaged progressive politics in Britain more than Tony Blair.
Well, it wouldn't be like Tony Blair to want to invade a Middle Eastern country that doesn't have nuclear bombs, would it? you know.
By claiming that they do, yeah.
Just let's just say they have, so we can, you know. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just allegedly, you know, just allegedly. I think like for me, obviously we sort of mentioned that we were going to quickly discuss Tony Blair, and I think my reflection on that is just what sort of mental state you have to be in, or what sort of, you know, lack of self-awareness, let's put it nicely, right, to be encouraging conflict in the Middle East after he led a campaign to, you know, that led 636 British soldiers to their death in a needless war that ended with Taliban rule in Afghanistan and ISIS springing up in Iraq. Now, if that's the blueprint that we're following in Iran, then we better brace ourselves, basically. I mean, I can't put it any more blunt than that, I think, to be honest.
I think that summarizes it perfect. It's like you took a call from Donald Trump, was like, so you promised me that you don't have an exit plan. He was like, oh, no, not an exit. I haven't got an exit plan. Always excellent, because I only get involved in conflicts when there's no plan for the outcomes from it, you know, because that's the way I like to do it. Insanity.
Well, I think he said it's not our. It's Trump's line was, "It's not our responsibility to come up with the plan." So I mean,
lead people to freedom. You know, you lead a horse to water. All of that stuff. It's just insanity. It's meddling, and it's meddling to secure resources. It's the same with Venezuela. It's the same with the threats about Greenland. All of it.
I was just about to say, I wish we could go back to a time where we were just worried about them invading Greenland.
Yeah, that seems
like a more
like days ago.
Yeah.
I can't keep up with this pace. It's absolutely insane. And Donald Trump, you know, is embattled on many fronts over in the US. He's really, it just makes you wonder. I mean, looking towards the midterm elections that they've got over there coming up. I do a live stream on Substack normally on Wednesdays with my friend Ahmed Barbar, who's over there, political commentator. And he was telling me the other day that, you know, a lot of the midterms, I mean, they're expecting to get an absolute hiding, you know, even if it just means Trump supporters staying at home, you know, because they're not enthused. Because a lot of them have been put off by the war. A lot of them should have been put off a lot sooner, if you ask me. But if you take things like the ICE action, which is still continuing in dribs and drabs, the murders of Renee Good, you know, all of those things that have happened domestically in the US, and then you're asking the US population to sacrifice their young people and their service personnel in a war and their safety and security. And then the price at the pump of oil is going up. It's surely not looking good for him.
No, definitely not. I mean, the main worry is how he keeps referencing the fact that if the country's at war, that elections don't need to take place. I mean, that's the path. I just Beth Clark just dropped a comment in there saying Farage isn't bothered about ordinary people. He's only concerned about what's in it for him. And I think like that's one of my main frustrations, to be honest. I think you're absolutely bang on, Beth. But that's one of my main frustrations, is that, you know, it's what I make a lot of my content about on Instagram and TikTok, is that like it really upsets me that this, you know, second generation stockbroker who, you know, self-declared Thatcherite,
top three in school, you know, in the
man
country.
of people, in, you know, when in reality it's only going to go one direction, you know. And a lot of the problems that we're facing in industry, I know I'm coming a little bit away from the topic here, but a lot of the problems that we're seeing in industry and the lack of jobs has come from privatization in the back end of the 80s, where Thatcher sold off basically all of the government's assets, and it's left, even, you know, look at water companies, British Gas, basically anywhere where we spend money is being removed in dividends going abroad, you know. So it's just money being extracted from the country. But yeah, and I think that's what Farage cares about, is keeping people like his main donor, Christopher Harborne, who's some sort of crypto bro. I seen Farage, he just popped up in my feed there earlier, that he's bought about £250,000 stock in, is it Kwasi Kwarteng? Is that his name?
Yeah,
his new cryptocurrency.
It's crazy.
I mean, yeah, it doesn't sound like a man of the people, does he? But I think that just shows you the gap that is available right now, and it's being filled by Nigel Farage.
It's the Donald Trump path as well, the crypto coins and all that stuff, and it just shows that they will go anywhere. They will go where the money is. It doesn't matter if it fits with their brand or their identity or whatever, because these are old boys. A lot of them are old Etonians and, kind of tweed jacket wearers and all the rest of it. And, they have this very particular old England image. Crypto doesn't really fit with that, does it? And yet they know that money's there, and it is all about money for them. You talk about privatizing. Nigel Farage, big fan of privatizing every industry. The final thing that I think he wants to privatize is politics. This is his kind of vision, is private industry bankrolling him, individuals with money. Aaron Banks was obviously his first big donor. And I don't know how you do it, Craig. How do we do it? How do we get someone to throw millions at you when, and Boris Johnson used to do the same thing. Every time he needed something new, there were all these emails that got released between him and somebody he went to school with 20 years ago saying, I'm fancying this house somewhere. It's 480 grand. Don't suppose you can front it for me? Yeah, no worries, Boris. I'll put it in your bank account. What world do these people live in where that's possible? Where most people cannot put the money in the meter to get their electricity on. And they're being told,
I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you at the end of the stream.
Goes off.
Yeah, I was going to ask you at the end of the stream if you had a spare bit of cash knocking about for a new house for us, but
I might be able to find a fiver or something. But not 450 grand, a fiver, yeah, maybe.
But yeah, you're right. It's funny, like the privatization of politics as well, where he is the CEO and owner, the owner of Reform Limited, which is the company that he operates in, which has one voter who decides basically everything that happens with reform. Doesn't sound very democratic to me, but I think my line on it, right, and I get people are disenfranchised with Labour. People don't want to vote Tory for obvious reasons and think, reform seems like an option. Well, rather than go for that, if you're working, just join a union, because they are looking out for working people.
Yeah, that's what collective. It's collective then, and it's not. And like, even if you disagree with, the political direction of one trade union or whatever it may be, you leave them and you join a different one. It's about collectivism, and it's about actually having a group approach to things rather than these individuals who would happily have somebody like Elon Musk bankroll everything. The things while we're talking about Trump being embattled, I'll just throw this up actually, because we've got it here to look at, and it is these latest accusations, I'm going to use the word, which aren't new. They're from 2019. The thing that was new was that in the latest tranche of Epstein files, they were held back. And the DOJ, Department of Justice, held them back. We don't have evidence that Donald Trump ordered them to do that. I think one day we probably will. That's my guess. But we know that, Pam Bondi, who runs the DOJ, is the Attorney General, she said that, there was nothing more. There was nothing to see here. Every time they've said that, it's been proven that there's more, and there's more going on. And this is the latest one. That's that the memos describe a series of interviews in 2019 with the woman who makes uncorroborated claims against Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. President's obviously consistently denied that. According to one of the three memos, the unnamed woman told the FBI, this is in 2019, she told the FBI during an interview that she was introduced to Trump by Epstein in the 1980s when she was a teenager, and the woman has accused both men of sexually assaulting her when she was between the age of 13 and 15. This is the woman who has accused Donald Trump of sexually assaulting her and then beating her when she resisted.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one to react to, isn't it? I mean, the painful thing for me, James, is amongst all of this that's coming out with the Epstein files, there's a lot of talk, and rightfully so, about Donald Trump and Epstein and anyone, Prince Andrew, who I still call Prince Andrew, by the way, because he was a prince when he was doing all that stuff. Yeah. Why would we stop calling him a prince? I think it's almost letting the royal family off to a certain extent. So it's Prince Andrew.
It's an attempt from them to distance themselves from the responsibility of it, isn't it?
Prince Andrew. And I think like that person who's reported that and come forward, where's the justice for that person? How many victims are we going to come see? How many victims are we going to see come forward once Donald Trump's gone? And I mean, gone. Is it going to be like? And obviously, this is just pure speculation. But what my concern is that there's victims who are sat at home waiting for him to go in a similar way that we've seen with Jimmy Savile, where he went, and it is speculation, but it's a fear because you've got one of the most, you've got a ring of people who are the most powerful people in the world, right?
Exactly. They won't feel safe till they're gone, and that was the same with Epstein. Look at Epstein. So many people came out after that point, and I do think that people at the end of the day have to realize that yes, of course, that's not on the victims because the victims can't put themselves in danger. It should be on us as a society to make sure that because of course the truth will out. The truth will always out. That always goes without saying. But it's not just the truth we need; it's justice.
Yeah, exactly. And it's another frustration of mine, right? That, you've got convicted sex offenders and you've got this almost like, what's the word? Idolization from people, who claim to be protectors of, and, the saviors of women and in this country who idolize Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And that just clearly isn't the case. And it's like you're weaponizing women's rights for political value. And claiming that you want to stop the votes to protect women, when in reality, you're more likely to be, a woman's far more likely to be abused by someone that they know or their partner or in their own home than what they are walking past in a silent hotel. And that isn't to say that there isn't problems with putting, 30, 40, 50 men, no matter where they come from,
it's men.
Having that
exactly.
where they're not working, they're in a hotel, hours and ends. People complain about them going to parks. If I was trapped in a hotel and I couldn't work and I had no money to spend, I would probably go sit in the park on a sunny day, So no wonder. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a long conversation to have. It's just that frustration I have between people who support Donald Trump, but then also claim to be big on women's rights. I find that a very, very conflicting set of narratives.
It's the audacity, isn't it? And we see it, and it staggers me because, of course, this will happen when you have, a sexual predator in the most powerful office in the world, right? But it gives credence to other predators, and we see that right now. I cannot believe that somebody like Russell Brand is walking around making podcasts, doing interviews, right? I can't comment on the kind of allegations against him. It's going through a process as it should, right? But it should be enough, at least in the meantime, while there are those allegations against you, for you to be not going around selling yourself and promoting yourself and all the rest of it. People like Conor McGregor, I'm still seeing people say that Conor McGregor's a great fighter. I can't wait for him to come back. That's mainstream, by the way. You hear that from people all the time. And then you say, Conor McGregor's a rapist. And they go, is he? It was well documented, of the assault that he committed in Dublin, and obviously he had to pay that woman money as a result. It was in civil court. If you get to a point where you're saying, well, he was only found to have done it in civil court, not criminal court, what world are we in where at one time that would have buried someone, that would have finished them?
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like we're just at the point now where it's just an overload of absurdity, and you lose track. Just a message there, supporting Donald Trump and support humans in any way is a total red flag behavior. Definitely.
I think one thing before we wrap up, actually, that would be good to look at to try and maybe inject a bit of hope into the conversation is a reminder of yesteryear from a certain individual, a certain former president. Now, look, he's not somebody who I had disagreements with, including action in the Middle East, including drone strikes, all that stuff. But it still shows you that regardless of political differences you can have, what it's like when somebody carries himself with dignity and is able to speak up against things. And we've got this clip from Obama. It was from Reverend Jesse Jackson's funeral, who obviously was a huge influential figure, and especially in the civil rights movement. He just passed away, and Obama spoke at his funeral. And we've got the clip, I think. Let me throw it up.
In a time when it can be hard to hope. Each day we wake up to some new assault on our democratic institutions. Another setback to the idea of the rule of law. an offense to common decency. Every day you wake up to things you just didn't think were possible. Each day we're told by those in high office to fear each other and to turn on each other, and that some Americans count more than others, and that some don't even count at all. Everywhere we see greed and bigotry being celebrated, and bullying and mockery masquerading as strength. We see science and expertise denigrated, while ignorance and dishonesty and cruelty and corruption are reaping untold rewards. Every single day we see that, and it's hard to hope. It may be tempting for some to compromise with power and grab what you can, or even for good people to maybe just put your head down and wait for the storm to pass. But this man, Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson, inspires us to take a harder path. And because if we don't step up,
I think we can see there from that clip that it just shows you everything that we're missing, doesn't it? You know, now, like, I think it's the reminder that, you know, that even if politically there's differences, you look back to the campaign between him and John McCain, you know, we should be able to get decency back at the front of public life.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what it is? It's just refreshing to see someone actually make a good representation of a country without having to state every 5 seconds, we are the hottest country in the world. Donald Trump impression wasn't on the bingo card. It was absolutely terrible.
It wasn't that bad, man. It wasn't. Well, you do more. I
don't want to start doing impressions for views and likes because we're that far away. Do you know what I mean? I need to say actually, because my self-esteem is directly related to how many subscribers we have on this YouTube channel. So if you haven't subscribed, get on there now. Otherwise, I'll be miserable all week. All right, and it'll be until next Monday when my self-esteem starts to go up again. So,
oh no, we cannot let that happen.
I'll pass it back over to you, James. But I just want to say thanks for everyone for coming on Monday evening, first stream. You're in at ground zero of what's going to be the greatest podcasting live stream in the world. So
the greatest online community. The greatest online community. You'll be day one members, founding fathers.
Yeah,
that'll be
Dangerous Knights crew.
The Dangerous Knights
crew. Make that thing.
Exactly. But no, thank you so much for everyone who was joined, stayed with us, chatted to us. Please spread the word. Please subscribe. I never thought I'd hear myself say that, Craig, by the way, the depths to which we have plummeted. Please subscribe and and press the bell as well, because then you get notified. You know, that's my best influencer impression.
And also give us a follow on if you haven't already. You probably have because you're here, but have a look for us on Instagram and TikTok and all that sort of stuff. That guy, Craig, James Matheson.
Yeah, definitely.
And see you next week, please.
We'll see you next week here every Monday at 8:00 because that's
class. We got it. We didn't even tee that up.
Didn't even rehearse that either. That's amazing. The political Ant and Deck. That's going to be our
Which one of us is going to have a breakdown? Probably me.
Yeah, I mean, we'll let people place bets on that. I think in the meantime, we'll see. Amazing. Thank you, Craig.
Nice one. Pleasure, James. See you next week.
Bye, everyone.